Story has been a very important part of my journey. It really started when I was 8 years old, and I had this incredible dream that someday I would grow up and hopefully become a Major League Baseball player. Next thing you know, I'm in high school and things are going really well in high school, and I'm having a wonderful experience, and life is so good for me. My senior year in high school, the coach pulled me aside at the end of the season and he said, "You know, Dave, I really do think you have the ability to play at the next level." But there wasn't one university in the entire country that recruited me to come and play for them. So I did the next best thing and I stayed local. I was born and raised in Youngstown, Ohio, and walked on at Youngstown State University, where I played for that baseball powerhouse, the YSU Penguins. And that's where I began my college career. In the summer of 1978, after my fourth year at YSU, the Pittsburgh Pirates selected me in the 21st round, and the first leg of my dream had become a reality. And so for the next 3 years, I played in the Pittsburgh Pirate farm system and had a wonderful experience there. And it was the spring of 1981. A group of us were sitting around in a circle, and we were all talking about if we never made it to the big leagues with the Pittsburgh Pirates, where would be the best place to go? One of the guys said, "Hey, I heard the best place to go would be the San Diego Padres, because if you never made it to the big leagues with the Padres, at least their AAA team was in Hawaii." A couple days passed after that conversation with my friends, and the farm director, after practice, had called my name. He said, "We've traded you to the San Diego Padres, and now all I can think about is Hawaii, here I come." He looked at me and he said, "The San Diego Padres are shipping you off to Amarillo, Texas." And I thought to myself, where on God's earth is Amarillo? All of a sudden, I found myself on my way to Amarillo, Texas. And it was actually an amazing summer for me, because it was there that I met my roommate and teammate Byron Ballard. That summer, I ended up being 15-5 and selected the minor league pitcher of the year. And it was an amazing summer in the context of baseball. But what was even more important that summer was the journey that I had begun with Byron Ballard. Prior to all of this, I thought I was a Christian. And I'll never forget that summer with the challenge that Byron gave me when he said, "Dave, I want you to discover who you are in relationship to God." And it was that summer he challenged me to start reading the scriptures. The very first thing that I discovered was that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. I'm a sinner, period. In that sin, I was separated from fellowship with God. The wage of sin is death. When I came face to face with that reality in Scripture, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us, I came face to face with a love that I cannot comprehend. And even though I can't fully understand that love, when I think about my love for my family and the fact that I couldn't give my kids in death for anybody else, and then I think of what God did for me in giving His Son, His one and only Son, in death so that I could live, that blows me away. Prior to all of this, it was all about the goods outweighing the bads. We're all desperate people. Regardless of what our circumstances are right now, we are all desperate people because of sin. And in our desperation, what I came to learn in Amarillo, Texas as a sinner was that God intervened through His Son, Jesus Christ. And I realized that there is nothing we can do, for it is by grace that we have been saved, through faith, and this not of ourselves. It is a gift of God, not by works, so that no man can boast. And when I read that verse in Ephesians, I realized that God did it all. I could now have confidence and assurance in knowing that if I embraced what Jesus did for me on the cross and invited Him into my heart, that I would have heaven, eternity with God. Little would I know how important that would be than when I heard the word cancer. I will never forget when this small lump on the outside of my left arm developed into half the size of a golf ball. And the doctors were now telling me I had cancer, and my world came crumbling down. The reality was I wasn't thinking about my job and what I did. I was thinking more about my relationships and the significance of those relationships. The doctors looked at me and said, outside of a miracle, I would never pitch again. And after they had removed 50% of my deltoid muscle along with the tumor in my left arm, I was actually able to come back and pitch, and not just to throw 1 or 2 pitches, but 93 pitches to a victory against the Cincinnati Reds on August 10th, 1989. And now I'm in Montreal for the second game, and it was the 6th inning. I reared back, and I threw a fastball, and my left arm snapped in half, and I went falling to the ground. 5 hours prior to the ball game in Montreal against the Expos, I was having lunch with Bob Knepper, and we were talking about the miracle of the comeback, because after all, the doctor said outside of a miracle you'll never pitch. And he looked at me and he goes, Dave, it really isn't the miracle of the comeback that's so important here. It's the miracle of salvation that occurred in your life back in 1981 in Amarillo, Texas. And what God is doing is providing a platform through baseball for you to share His love with those who hurt. So now all of a sudden, fast forward to me laying on the ground with a broken arm. And all I could hear were Bob Knepper's words. It's not the miracle of the comeback, it's the miracle of salvation. And God is providing a platform for you to share His love with those who hurt through the game of baseball. That fall, I retired from baseball. There were more radiation treatments that I had to go through, and then ultimately it culminated with the loss of my left arm and shoulder. My story revolves around this whole idea of being in the midst of pain and suffering and realizing that God was up to something so much bigger than baseball. I look back on those days with Byron Ballard, and he basically said, Dave, I want you to discover who you are in relationship to God. And so that's my challenge to you, to discover who you are in relationship to God.